From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Soini Gray. President Nicolas Maduro is in Moscow for meetings with President Vladimir Putin. The Venezuelan president took to Twitter to report on his day.
We're walking through the streets of Moscow after a successful meeting with President Putin. We had many positive agreements in several areas such as financial, oil, defense, commercial, and many more. Tomorrow we will continue signing new great agreements. Right now it's already late in the evening. It's minus 10 degrees Celsius here. Warm greetings to the Venezuelan people. We will keep in touch and we will keep fighting for Venezuela, our motherland.
On Wednesday, the two leaders discussed ways of strengthening cooperation, including in new oil and gas agreements. The Venezuela-Russia Intergovernmental Commission, initiated under the former president Hugo Chavez, has consolidated more than 260 agreements between the two countries. The family of the murdered Argentine activist Santiago Maldonado has rejected the judiciary's decision to end all investigations regarding his case. Officials said Maldonado drowned, but his family says he was the victim of a forced disappearance. Our correspondent, Igado Esteban, has the details.
The family of Santiago Maldonado gave a press conference alongside human rights organizations and social movements to reject the resolution of Judge Gustavo Yeral, who decided to close the investigations into the case of Santiago Maldonado. Santiago's body was found near Riverbank in October 2017 after he had disappeared for more than 70 days. His mother said the judge is caving to the government's pressure and insisted the family only wants to know the truth about what happened to him.
Staying in Argentina, women are protesting against the court's decision on the rape and murder of the teenager Lucia Perez. Outrage spread in the country as the three accused were found not guilty on November 28th. The court said their guilt could not be proven despite the fact that they offered drugs to Lucia and they took her to their home. Feminist groups say this is additional proof of the lack of gender perspective within the judiciary. And earlier, the Argentinian journalist and activist Jimena Shinka joined us to talk about the case and also about feminist movements around the world and Latin America.
Ni Una Menos was born in 2015 in Argentina because of another femicide against teenagers named Chiara Paez. And that is the movement is growing around the continent and around the world. And that's why we are thinking that this is not going to stop. It is going to grow no matter if judicial authorities or the government are not taking enough policies to protect women in our countries.
A Spanish court has ordered the 5 members of the Wolf Pack to 9 years in prison for sexual abuse. All over Spain, demonstrators took to the streets to reject what they say was a far too lenient sentence. The men were accused of assaulting and gang raping an 18-year-old in 2016 during the San Fermin festival. 2 out of the 5 judges said the group had to be condemned for sexual aggression and face 14 years in prison. Our correspondent in Spain, Adriana Cardoso, gives us more details about the protest against the sexual abuse sentence of the Wolf Pack.
We're standing in front of the Justice Ministry where protesters have gathered, calling for tougher sentences for the so-called Wolf Pack. The 5 men were each handed 9-year prison sentences for sexual abuse, but they were acquitted of the more serious charge of rape. The judges said there was no proof of violence and that it was unclear whether intimidation had taken place due to lack of force used against the 18-year-old victim. Under Spain's current law, an offense can only be classified as rape if there is evidence of violence or intimidation, such as being threatened with a knife or being physically hit. 2 judges on the 5-member, all-male panel disagreed with the decision, saying that the gang had committed rape. They, therefore, urged for tougher sentences. However, All 5 judges agreed that the filming of the attack violated the victim's privacy and ordered the lower court to issue a sentence for the offense. The case and the sentencing has sparked fresh protests, with demands for better justice and an end to what they describe as patriarchal justice.
Now, women's organizations have protested against macho fascism in politics at the COP24 in Poland. One organization called the Women Gender Constituency Group used a performance to protest against macho culture. They say the conservative trend is affecting people around the world and called for women to rise up against it. World leaders have met in Poland for the 2-week-long climate change summit, COP24.
Because we're very much concerned that in these halls and as it is all over the world, we see the rise of macho fascism, right-wing politicians, right-wing governments.
And earlier this morning, we were joined by our correspondent, Watmore Makokoba, who gave us details about how the COP24 summit negotiations are unfolding in Poland.
Other countries are saying, especially countries that produce coal, like Poland here where the COP24 is happening, are saying if there is to be just transition, there has to be some consideration into some social issues like employment. There has to be some consideration into some social and economic issues so that the transition, it doesn't have to affect the lives of people. So people are still debating and trying to come up with a way of making sure that if this is going to happen like sustainably, there has to be some ways of making sure that it does not affect the lives of people who are employed in especially in the core sector.
The authorities in Tijuana, Mexico are cracking down on activists who are trying to distribute humanitarian aid around shelters. Our correspondent in Tijuana, Pablo Perez, brings us the details on the migrant situation at the border.
Approximately 500 people remain here outside of what was the first shelter in Tijuana, Sport Center Benito Juarez. Meanwhile, another 200 people were transferred to the shelter El Barretal. Many people do not feel safe in that shelter due to the danger in the vicinity where the center is located. So they have decided to remain here. Humanitarian aid from different organizations have been banned in order to allow authorities to force the transfer of migrants to the other shelter. Police have tried to arrest a number of activists who tried to bring food to these people who are now living in the streets as the Benito Juarez is closed.
And Mexico's new president has proposed offering more work visas for Central Americans. He's also urging the United States to do the same. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador proposed investment in job creation is aimed at stemming the northward flow of migrants. He was speaking at a news conference where he also read the Riot Act to foreign and national oil companies. He is challenging them to pump oil quickly or, he says, no further oil fields will be offered. Mexican researchers are interested in the migratory phenomenon that has led thousands to seek asylum at the border in northern Mexico.
Mexican social experts have been researching the Central American exodus for 16 days. After traveling over 4,000 kilometers, migrants established themselves in Tijuana to apply for asylum in the United States.
Why does this number stand out, if in fact it represents a very small fraction of the people who travel through Mexico? I would answer that is because they are visible for the first time.
Researchers are trying to answer questions about the society lived in by the thousands of Central Americans at the border.
There's no proof that crime has risen because of these people. On the contrary, we see that this group has a lot of potential to integrate into this city's productive life.
Analyzing decisions taken before the migratory phenomenon, they are denouncing the lack of planning by the authorities.
A lot of actions are being improvised rather than planned. There is more capacity to house people in the Barretal, but that doesn't mean conditions are more dignified.
The xenophobic behavior expressed by a minority in Tijuana is also being studied. There is a specific cause behind it.
These demonstrations of rejection shows an inability on the part of the government to solve this issue.
Over 5,000 migrants are currently housed in shelters across Tijuana. They left their country seeking a dignified life. And today, they have to face the decisions of a frontier government that is just improvising.
And still in Mexico, the first female mayor of Mexico City has been sworn in, and she has made commitments to end the persecution of opposition. Claudia Sheinbaum has a science background, and she was also a part of the UN climate change panel that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007.
Therefore, the first thing we will do is stop the abuse. From now on, democracy and political freedom are restored. Never again will we exercise or allow persecution and direct or stimulate violence against those who think and act in a way different to who is governing.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. The Bolivian Electoral Court has allowed Evo Morales to run for re-election. Morales can now be elected in his party's primary elections ahead of presidential polls scheduled for 2019. The current president could be re-elected for the fourth time in a row. The Bolivian Vice President Alvaro Garcia Linero will also be able to stand on the Morales ticket. Our correspondent Freddy Morales tells us more.
Bolivian President Evo Morales and his Vice President Álvaro García Linera have been enabled by the Supreme Electoral Court to run in primary elections next January 27 and in the general elections on October 2019. The authorization was passed by 4 of the 6 votes from the Electoral Court that has also allowed other 7 political groups to run. This court's decision was taken 2 days before the deadline set by the electoral schedule and surprised a sector of the political opposition that is organizing protests across the country against Morales and Linera's candidacy. The opposition has announced it will continue to protest and will call for a 24-hour strike organized by civic institutions, besides a demonstration in La Paz and also a vigil outside the electoral court. Opposition candidates believe this authorization marks a blow to democracy. Meanwhile, members from Morales' party celebrate their leaders have been allowed by the Electoral Court to participate. They say the Electoral Court has given Bolivia's people the choice on the future government for Bolivia.
The Colombian National Electoral Council has said it will investigate Senator Gustavo Petro because of a video scandal. Footage has been released showing Petro receiving money, which the senator admitted he received in 2005, but he insists that he did not commit a crime. Petro says the video seeks to end his political career and silence the Odebrecht corruption scandal and investigations in Colombia. The Nobel Peace Prize winner Adolfo Pérez Esquivel has reached out to the Ecuadorian government because of his serious concern for the health of the former vice president, Jorge Glass. The Argentinian activist has sent a letter to President Lenin Moreno sharing his concern. Esquivel says the Ecuadorian government has a duty to take care of the former vice president. Glass is in prison facing charges of corruption and has been on a hunger strike for more than 40 days. And Interpol has decided to reject the red notice for the arrest of the former Ecuadorian president, Rafael Correa. According to Interpol, the petition, which was submitted by the current Ecuadorian government, did not meet the requirements established by the organization. Correa, who now lives in Belgium, has argued that the request was made for political reasons. Now, Cuba's telecommunication company, Etetsca, will be releasing 4 mobile data packages on Thursday. This will be the first time in 5 years that Cubans will have access to internet outside of public Wi-Fi areas in parks around the island. President Miguel Díaz-Canel championed greater connectivity to boost the economy and enable Cuba to better defend its revolution online. CARICOM leaders have signed a declaration to move towards the full free movement in a single market economy within the next 3 years. It's one of several resolutions passed during the 18th Special CARICOM Summit in Trinidad, which wrapped up on Tuesday. Caribbean leaders also agreed to expand the categories of skilled workers free to move within the region. There was also consensus on Haiti's full integration by 2020.
We considered the implementation plan for Haiti's full participation in the CSME, and we welcome the assistance that that country will receive from the European Development Fund in their efforts to become compliant with the measures to ensure that they can participate in the CSME.
We are cognizant that there is about $47 billion in savings within the community, and that we need to find a way of unlocking those savings such that our businesses and our governments can have access to affordable capital, to borrow at affordable rates, while at the same time giving our citizens and companies better options for greater returns on their money than they're currently getting from keeping that money in savings accounts.
Meanwhile, Jamaica's unemployment rate is currently at a record low, while joblessness among youth has seen a significant decline. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the announcement at an Action 2018 forum on the island.
2018, July, we saw the lowest reported unemployment rate, 8.4%. Means we would have had the highest number of Jamaicans employed in the history of Jamaica. In particular, youth unemployment declined by 5.3% to now be at 22.2%. These are very encouraging figures.
The Caribbean island of Nevis has received a cash injection to help improve the delivery of its dialysis services. Taiwan has donated $160,000. The funding is intended for the procurement of hemodialysis machines and water systems. This means that patients will no longer have to travel to the sister isle of St. Kitts for treatment. The first baby has been born from a uterus transplanted from a dead person in Brazil. The healthy baby girl was born in Sao Paulo after her 32-year-old mother received a uterus transplant from a woman who had died from bleeding in her brain. The mother, who was born without a uterus, underwent a 10-hour operation followed by fertility treatments. There have been 39 uterus transplants from live donors, but the 10 previous attempts from a dead donor had all failed. To sports now. Female players of the Colombian team that won the Libertadores Cup tournament are calling for more support for women's football. Yoreli Rincon from the Atletico Huila team criticized the fact that the $55,000 prize was about to be used for the men's team, which plays in the first division of the Colombian League. But after the controversy, the club changed its mind. Still, female players are calling for more promotion and better contracts within their league. And the Colombian long and triple jump athlete Catherine Imbarguen has been chosen as the Athlete of the Year 2018 by the International Association of Athletic Federations. At a ceremony held in Monaco, she became the first South American athlete to win the award. Interviewed after the event, she said that she was filled with joy and dedicated the award to her family and country. Congratulations to her. We take a short break now. World News is next.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. France has abandoned the fuel tax hike that was previously suspended for 6 months. President Emmanuel Macron's decision follows weeks of massive protests, which saw riots and police repression. The news comes one day after the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, said the tax hike would be delayed for 6 months from its planned January 2019 rollout. A court in France has approved the extradition of the brother of the former president of Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré, to face prosecution in his home country for the murder of a journalist 20 years ago. Francis Compaoré is accused of ordering the murder of the investigative journalist Norbert Zongo and 3 of his companions, whose burnt bodies were found in an abandoned car. At the time of his murder, Zongo had been investigating the death of Compaoré's former driver. A campaign has been launched in Spain to end the discrimination against the Romani people and to highlight their influence in the country's culture.
Romani people are requesting
Mírame a los ojos.
For society to learn about the historical influence they have had on Spanish culture, from literature to politics.
It is still very necessary to raise awareness about all the contributions we have made. They are still unknown.
This is a chapter that has been erased from history books.
Una lección que nunca aprendiste porque nunca te la enseñaron.
A campaign is highlighting in a book and a video all those forgotten names in the Romani community and the anecdotes that were never told. The goal is to understand the Romani culture.
The lack of knowledge generates prejudice, and prejudice generates distrust. So we want to end with these misconceptions by sharing information so that we can all live together in equality.
The Romani People Association launched the campaign. They say there is still a lot to do for the Romani community to be included in society, although a lot of progress has been made in the last years in contrast to other European countries.
There are governments that are spreading messages against the Romani people, racist messages. This is something we worry about.
But to fight racism, information is key.
We need to take our history to schools. We are already working on that. We need to involve business and companies. We need society to be involved in this fight of equality.
This campaign is aimed at ending with discrimination and the obstacles the Romani community has faced for the last 6 centuries.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May is facing a possible defeat in next Tuesday's final Brexit deal vote. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, explains.
A day after British MPs voted to find the UK government in contempt of Parliament, the government reluctantly published the legal basis for the Brexit agreement that it had been withholding up to now, and which caused this vote of censure by the British MPs. In a 6-page document released today, Wednesday, the British Attorney General Geoffrey Cox conceded that the issue of the Irish backstop, the prevention of a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, could trap the UK in a repeated and protracted series of negotiations. Now, the release of this information is likely to inflame the pro-Brexit MPs who have called the deal signed by the May government and the European Union a betrayal, essentially, of Britain leaving the EU, because it says it concedes far too much to the EU and gives them too much power over the terms of Britain's exit, which should have been, has to be done by the 29th of March. So Theresa May is currently trying to sell her deal effectively to MPs and to the nation, and on Tuesday the 11th of December the Parliament will vote on this deal. Now it currently looks like Parliament will reject the deal, and the release of this information today is likely to inflame further those on the Brexit side of her party who are angry with her and with the deal. So it's basically it is not looking good for Theresa May's ability to pass this deal on Tuesday the 11th of December, which is likely, and the fact that it won't be passed is likely to plunge her government into a further crisis. So these are the latest developments in the Brexit deal negotiations in Parliament.
Now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Hundreds of Iraqi citizens have marched to the regional government offices in Basra province, protesting against what they are calling deteriorating living conditions and lack of employment opportunities in the country. The protesters attempted to enter the government offices using force, but were repelled by soldiers guarding the premises. A judge in Kenya has reversed a decision made by Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko to ban public transport minibuses, commonly known as matatus, from the capital city's central business district. The ban left thousands of Nairobi commuters stranded after they were unable to find transport to their places of work. The governor attempted to ban matatus in an effort to decongest the area. The owner of a South African guest house which refuses to accommodate black people has appealed against a judgment which found him guilty of hate speech and discrimination. Andre Slade caused outrage when he made remarks that he doesn't accommodate black people because they brought prostitutes to the lodge. In his appeal, Slade claimed that the lower court's judgment violated his right to freedom of expression and the right not to allow people that did not fit his preferences at his establishment. Indonesian President Joko Widodo has ordered the immediate arrest of individuals responsible for the killing of at least 24 construction workers in the country's Papua province. A Facebook account purportedly run by the National Liberation Army of West Papua said that the armed group had killed the 24 workers on the orders of the regional commander.
I have ordered the chiefs of the military and national police to chase and arrest all the perpetrators of these barbaric acts. I'm reaffirming that there is no place for criminal armed groups like these.
And we come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.